The Brian Crabtree Show on Demand is brought to you by Snelling's Walters Insurance. More than an advisor, an advocate. SnellingsWalters.com. The Brian Crabtree Show, live in Atlanta, afternoon starting at 4 on Biz 1190, Biz1190.com, and the Biz 1190 mobile app.
Brian Crabtree. The Brian Crabtree Show.
All right, welcome to our show at Brian Crabtree on Twitter, Talk40.com. Now, you've been watching all the hurricane coverage for the last 2 or 3 weeks, and it's just devastating from the Keys of Florida to Jacksonville to the west coast of Florida through Louisiana. And then, of course, Houston with the aftermath of Hurricane Harvey. And what we're finding is a lot of businesses, a lot of workers for those businesses really struggling. And it brings to light a question: how can Georgia be impacted by all of this in terms of doing business in those areas, businesses that are reliant upon that? Are they underinsured? And what happens if there's a natural disaster in your backyard, a tornado, a flood? Are we really insured and prepared for a fraction or even a pittance of what we saw in Florida, Texas, and Louisiana? To help us unpack that and to give you some advice on how to make sure you're covered and protected, SnellingsWalters.com, Snellings Walters Insurance Agency, and our insurance expert, Mike Iverson.
Good to be back, Brian.
Americans, from the regular homeowner to the big business, all have insurance. And it's times like these where we have major hurricanes coming into the country, tornadoes in other parts of the country like Georgia, where we find out, surprisingly, that sometimes we're underinsured. How do we coach people to deal with that and take a positive lesson out of all of this negative?
Yeah, I think the most common thing that people do is they look at the market value of their home, and what they don't think about is what would it cost to actually replace. And when you're replacing something, you're replacing it at time of loss. So you need to be thinking, hey, if something bad does happen, there could be some cost increase or spikes. And either you're going to have that built into your policy where you have some sort of, additional replacement cost coverage. There's all sorts of names for it, guaranteed replacement costs, et cetera, Just will the policy go above and beyond the limits if it has to? And so many people are caught up in the market value of their house. Their land is appreciating. The house is depreciating. And so what they do is they undervalue the actual cost to replace their home.
So in terms of business insurance as well, I mean, you've got businesses, small businesses that are operating, they get shut down. I mean, you've got places that you can't even get to, let alone the businesses, can open. They perhaps have been destroyed. How do small businesses prepare themselves for something like this? You've got loss of revenue for some people that are landlords renting to these businesses, loss of rent. I mean, do people think about this stuff, or do you find that a lot of people are just wholly uninsured in this regard?
I think a lot of people do have decent agents. So their agents or brokers are talking to them about business income if their business is destroyed. And so a lot of times what happens is people who have a business that's been destroyed or there's been damage from the storm, many will have business income coverage. The question is, will it last as long? So the duration of the business income, how long did they purchase the income for? So they buy it for 12 months worth of coverage? Did they buy it for 18 months worth of coverage? All of that is the consideration, and usually a mistake that buyers and brokers make is not giving enough time for the coverage.
Well, they think maybe 6 months is probably enough, and it could be that 6 months is just a drop in a bucket for some of these locations where they have to dig out to even get back to rebuilding.
Yeah, or even here in the city of Atlanta. If you had a property that was inside of Fulton County and a tornado hit it, the question is how long will you get approval before you can even start reconstruction, much less finish reconstruction?
Yeah, I have to think that a lot of this is going to start to impact Atlanta. I know some service providers that have been here in Atlanta for a while that have actually picked up and moved down there for opportunities to get paid, obviously, premiums and make money and a consistent amount of work helping Florida in various ways rebuild. So that's going to drive up cost here. I also would have to think that, and maybe I don't know how insurance works in this regard, but when you have these hundreds of billions of dollars in losses from the Florida Keys up through Florida to Jacksonville, over to Louisiana and Houston, Texas, that area, I mean, it's just massive. Doesn't that have some sort of an impact on our insurance rates, whether it be business insurance where there's been losses down there or homeowners insurance where there's been tremendous losses? Doesn't that start to impact our rates, making them go up to absorb all that by the insurance companies?
It does and it doesn't, right? So this is the age-old adage, if they're making money in this particular region, they may want to make a little more money. But as long as the market's good, as long as we have a vast number of insurers who are going to play here, some of them weren't in Florida to begin with because they didn't want the exposure that Florida offers. So it's a real mixed bag. Will there be a small change? Yes. It rocks the reinsurance markets. So all insurance companies buy insurance. So just like you buy a policy with a deductible, you may buy $1,000 or $2,500 deductible. They are buying a policy with a deductible that could be $5 million or $10 million or $50 million, depending on the terms and conditions that the insurance company buys. So insurance companies buy insurance, and it's going to affect all of the insurance premiums for insurance companies.
That's interesting. So basically what you're saying is that we sort of self-insure up to a certain point. Maybe our $2,500 deductible is self-insurance, and then after that we may have $1 million in coverage. So the next, $1 million is covered by one insurance company or the other, and then they buy maybe a $50 million deductible on all of the insurance that they've written in case it's just catastrophic. And then you've got these insurance companies that just bank up money, perhaps sometimes for years before they ever have to pay out, called reinsurance. And that may be the indirect cost because reinsurance is obviously getting hit hard here with these hurricanes, and then that trickles down to us. But you said something interesting. By the way, we're with Mike Iverson, our insurance expert here on the Brian Crabtree Show. Mike is with SnellingsWalters.com, SnellingsWalters.com Insurance here in Atlanta. Is that basically some insurance companies did, in fact, pull out of the coastal areas and say, we're not writing anymore here, so they have such limited exposure. They may actually be more competitive in terms of price because they don't have to absorb the cost, and those people on certain insurance groups like, I don't know, State Farm or whatever, as an example, they pulled out of the coast a long time ago. They may not go up as much, but another carrier that's written a bunch of coastal insurance may have gotten hit hard, and if they have insurance customers here in the metro Atlanta area, their rates may go up more notably.
Yes.
Is that an accurate take?
Yeah, that's very accurate, and I think the hidden thing behind the scenes, if people really watch this Florida closely, Florida had a program for wind coverage, and it was based on participation. I won't go into it all, but only certain counties were in it, et cetera, et cetera. And there was a writer of insurance called Citizens. Citizens was kind of the only wind writer in Florida in a bunch of different zones, and Citizens was already in a position where everybody was watching them to make sure that financially they were going to be as strong as they need to be. And this loss, we'll see what happens, but it really could be disastrous for the citizens in Florida and for Citizens Insurance. And so we'll see what happens. We'll see if the federal government actually has to step in and actually make good on some of the citizens' policies. Hopefully that's not the case.
As far as here in Georgia, though, as far as homeowners, business insurance, as far as loss of income, loss of rent, those types of things, because we are not prone to as many natural disasters, or if there is a flood, it's contained. If it's a tornado, it's a smaller area. It's not widespread. Typically, making sure you're properly insured for that in Georgia is substantially, several times over cheaper than in places like coastal Florida and coastal Texas, right?
Absolutely, and in the areas that really will feel the impact of this storm is going to be our coastal regions.
Yeah, down in
right. So insurers are going to react to the fact that they could have been hit, and going back to that whole business income question you had at the beginning. I'll tell you, the people who are really going to be impacted are people who their business wasn't hit, so they don't have any direct loss to their business. But the market that they sell to, all of the people around them have been impacted, and so their sales are going to plummet.
Give us an example of a business that might entail. What sort of business would that be?
It could be any business. If we just go down into the area and say, here's a business that was built very, very well, and really has no structural damage, but all the homes around it are gone, we could even make it a McDonald's for that point. If McDonald's survived the storm, but there are no customers to sell to, McDonald's is wiped out. Unless they would have purchased some sort of coverage, and most people never consider this. They don't consider the fact that I only source my product from this manufacturer. If something happens to the manufacturer, I could be out of business. Or I only sell to this group of people, even geographic group of people, and if they get hit, I'm out of business.
And you can
consider that type.
You can buy insurance for that if they get destroyed, and that's my main customer base. I can get insurance to offset the time gap between when business fell off the cliff and when it comes and starts to normalize again.
Yeah, and these are all just kind of discussions that anybody should get into if they're operating a business. You know, is there a leader location that we're based on, or is there a retailer who is important to us and could impact us if they went down? These are all discussions you really should be having with your broker.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I talked about this last week because there's all this discussion of aid and government money going down and helping to rebuild, and ultimately that should be the role of insurance. And I think so many people in these areas, the insurance is so high, the rest of the country ends up in its own ways subsidizing it because a lot of people are not adequately insured. And you use the McDonald's example, and a lot of people think of McDonald's, well, this is a big, rich, fancy corporation. They can weather it, but it's not. It's individual, independent franchisees, sometimes owning just one store. And, yeah, they may make good money on a McDonald's, but at the point where they're shut down, they have employees out of work who can't work. They can't run the store's damaged or not, or the customers simply aren't there. I mean, they just basically hold their way back in over the weekend to Key West and are just now getting a good assessment of the catastrophic damage down there. So there's going to be a lot of businesses who are going to wish they had heard this radio interview a year or two ago before this happened to them. We'll leave it there. Mike Iverson, SnellingsWalters.com in Atlanta, the insurance expert, as you can tell, for all things business especially. SnellingsWalters.com. Always great to have you here. Give the phone number one more time, Mike.
It's 770-396-9600.
Great to have you.
The Brian Crabtree Show on demand is brought to you by Snelling's Walters Insurance. More than an advisor, an advocate. SnellingsWalters.com. The Brian Crabtree Show, live in Atlanta, afternoon starting at 4 on Biz 1190, Biz1190.com, and the Biz 1190 mobile app.